We got started in 2018, I believe, 2019, somewhere in there. Really what happened was my dad's now fiance had a tree fall down in her yard in Brentwood, and he called to ask if I could help out. And of course, I had an old chainsaw here at the farm, but I just kind of took the opportunity. I was like, oh, I'm gonna do this project. I'm gonna go get me a new saw and get it knocked out for her. And after, I think it took me 2 hours to get that tree cut up and stacked up on the road. That's kind of when I thought, I feel like I could make some money doing this on the side. At the time, I was working for a plumbing company out of Nashville. And so on the weekends, that's kind of how I'd spend my time. It wasn't really removing large trees at that time. It was more or less people had brush piles piled up they wanted gone, or they had a small tree that was nowhere near a house that they wanted cut down. And as time progressed, I kind of just got in with the right people and met the right group of guys to kind of turn Paszek Services in to what it is today. So list of services that we provide, and this is kind of an ongoing list as we continue to grow. Obviously our main bread and butter is the tree service. We do removals, especially high risk removals, pruning, trimming, weight reduction, cabling, anything that's relative to tree work, we manage. And that includes stump grinding as well. So especially recently, we've started to look into doing more dirt work projects, digging foundations, grade work, driveways, anything that can be done with a skid steer. We're trying to expand that market. Also, something exciting that's coming up here in the near future is we just purchased a tractor. So we will now be expanding our land management division. Bush hogging, land clearing is kind of what we're trying to gear that towards. So if you have any questions about any of those services, please feel free to reach out at any time. We have a lot of different size projects that are thrown our way, and we haven't come across one yet that's too big of a challenge. Currently, our biggest project to date, if we secure it, will be this 16-acre land clearing project that we're looking at in Christiana right now. You know, I feel like we've kind of established a great group of guys that are willing to step up to any challenge. And we've also got great mentors that we've been following for quite some time now to help out with questions or concerns or any challenges that we may need to overcome when looking at these large projects. But I mean, we're pretty much capable of doing them all. I mean, from the small little trim of a crepe myrtle in your front yard to, like I said, 16 acres of clearing a piece of property. I think we're well equipped with the knowledge and equipment to be able to handle any of them. If I had to break it down to our favorite project we've done, we've done a few, but we did a large project at Brentwood Country Club last year. So when I was in high school, that was kind of my first full-time job. I had a neighbor named BJ Parker, shout out to him. When I was in high school, I told him I was interested in doing work. At that time, I was kind of cutting grass around the neighborhood, nothing crazy. And he was the superintendent at Brentwood Country Club at the time. And so he got me on in the grounds crew out there at 5:30 in the morning. I started off just moving like tee markers so it didn't kill the grass below them every morning and picking up broken tees off the tee boxes. And being called back out there years later to do a large removal project for them while they were redoing the course, I think was a pretty rewarding experience, just to see a lot of the guys that were still there and kind of just reflect on the past a little bit. I thought that was pretty awesome because that was a cool one. It was like I think it took us 4 days and we removed some massive trees because they shut the whole golf course down for a year to redo everything. Yeah, I mean, they had just $4 million in irrigation work. Another one of our favorite projects is one that's kind of been ongoing. We had a client relocate to Fairview and he purchased a large sum of property, and we've been out there for the better part of 2 years now, kind of just going through the entire property, making selective cuts, not necessarily clear cutting or doing any type of land clearing, but making the property more accessible. So cutting roads in for side-by-side trails or roads big enough to get equipment and vehicles through. We've kind of opened up some different areas for some different buildings, some shops and stuff like that. And just overall going through, kind of seeing what the property has as far as species of trees, and selectively going through and removing some non-native species or invasive species of plants and trees. And that's been a huge blessing to us as a company too, because that's been some continuous work we've had for the last 2 years. There's not really a favorite type of project. I mean, I guess I can be a little biased. I do like the larger projects where we're there for like multiple days in a row. Just it's easier logistically. We can get all our gear out there, all of our trucks and stuff, and we can kind of set up a base camp essentially and just work throughout the week. But I love doing projects for HOAs. We're partnered with a couple large landscape companies in Nashville as well. Those are always great. And then I think at the end of the day, a satisfied customer is my favorite type of project, whether that's, cleaning up just a brush pile at the end of the driveway, or that's removing a 150-year-old oak tree that's overhanging your home. I think just the end goal, no matter what project it is just to have a happy client at the end of the day. For those of you that have stepped out on that limb and started your own business, you kind of understand the process of how it goes, especially if you're just kind of jumping headfirst into it without a big safety net. It was hard. There was plenty of times where I sat right here in the shop, twiddling my thumbs, trying to figure out how I was gonna make ends meet, where the money was gonna come from to pay for a piece of equipment I have, or the truck's broken down for 2 months, like what do you do? So trying to be as flexible as possible and think outside the box, I think helps a lot, especially when you're first getting started. Fortunately, whenever I quit my plumbing job and started doing this full time, we had landed a really big project that lasted for quite a few months, and kind of got a little spoiled on that. And then once it came time for that project to end, I was kind of sitting there wondering, what's the next step? Where do we go from here? And that's a scary thought, trying to figure all that out. And, I feel like that's part of the experience, and, it helps you grow as an individual and as a business owner. And in no way am I saying that I've got it figured out. Every day is different. Sometimes I wake up and I think it's great, and others I wake up and wondering what the hell is going on and how I'm gonna fix this and where we're headed. So, there's been some really great jobs, and there's been some really terrible jobs. And I feel like in the beginning, you're a lot more open to accepting those really terrible jobs that you don't want to do, because you don't have a choice. You're trying to get started, you're trying to get this plane off the ground and going. So you have to learn how to not be a yes man all the time, because I can tell you from experience, you can say yes to some pretty shitty jobs, and when you're there doing them for little to no money, you're kicking yourself the entire time, asking yourself why you're here, why you're doing this. But you live and learn, and those shitty jobs and those times that you're sitting there cussing yourself, they help you grow as an individual, they help you grow as a business owner, and they just help you make better, more informed decisions going forward. There's a lot of different variables that go into pricing out a tree job. I'm not gonna just say a removal, but trimming, removal, whatever it is. I think ease of access is probably one of the biggest ones, because that limits you time-wise. So, if you have a wide open backyard that's easily accessible, it's not hard for us to get our gear and equipment in there, perform the work and get out. Now, when you start to break it down and think about tight access, you've got, especially in Nashville right now, where they're tearing down these houses on a 1 acre lot and putting 2 houses right next to each other that are 10 feet apart. And you've got a tree that's right in the middle of them. That adds a lot more time, because you're having to be a lot more careful with your cuts. Your gear is gonna change. What kind of rigging you're doing is gonna change. So the whole project is kind of shaped around, mainly, if I had to get, it's usually just ease of access to whatever we're doing. Another thing that's big is utility lines, whether that's you've got a septic system in your backyard, because you can't bring an 8,000-pound skid steer over the top of fill lines. Another one is utility lines as far as electrical wires. I don't know if you saw in one of our recent videos in Belmead, and we had a live electrical wire touching a tree that we were removing. And like I said, in most of those cases, we'll have that drop, but in that particular one, we didn't have that option. I feel like a lot of clients, like I said, Being self-employed has a lot of pros and cons. From a time standpoint, I think it's great. You know, you kind of are able to dictate how you're going to spend your time, what you want to do with your time that suits you the best. I think the biggest challenge for me personally, and it's probably to my own fault for being too trusting, is not getting paid for projects. And that's kind of a hot topic. I think the best way, especially if you're starting out, is to just go ahead and get some sort of contractual agreement typed up. You know, sit down with an attorney, ask a bunch of questions, get all that figured out beforehand, so you don't end up in situations like I found myself in quite a bit, where people just, you know, you show up, you give them a quote, everything's great, you do the work, they give you the seal of approval, and then 3 months later, you're just sitting there still with an unpaid invoice. You know, it's not fun, because I think with, you know, especially with small businesses, you rely on every dollar, and every dollar matters. You know, it might only be a $1,500 job that you've been waiting on, but that $1,500 is a note payment on a skid steer that you've got. Or, you know, that $1,500 covers an extra laborer for a week, or whatever you need. So I think kind of laying the groundwork when you first get started is really important. And that's something I didn't do, so now it's kind of biting me in the ass, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to manage that now. As far as deposits go, I have not started doing deposits. I think for bigger projects, depending on, it's all relationship based. If I've done, like for Great House Landscaping, huge landscape company in Nashville, for example, like I don't do deposits with them, even though we might be doing a $20, $30, $40,000 project for them, just because they're a reputable company. We've done a lot of work for them, and the terms of payments are agreed on before. You know, a lot of these bigger companies, you know, you might not get paid for 45 or 60 days is kind of the general going timeline for that, which is perfectly fine. If it takes you 45 days to pay the invoice and those terms were agreed upon in the beginning, I have no problem with that, because you know what you're getting into. But when you have a residential job where you do $10,000 worth of work and the payment's due on receipt of the invoice, and then 3 months later you still haven't gotten paid, that's kind of where there's a kink in the line. Especially, you know, being a small business, like cash flow is king. I mean, that's one of the most important things. Just being able to have that steady money coming in to pay your expenses and pay your guys. So, and the other thing with tree work that's a little bit different than maybe to like if you're a landscaper or you're a carpenter, I'm not really providing any materials, if that makes any sense. So I'm not going out and buying $5,000 worth of plants and pavers. You know, pretty much all of my expenses are labor and, you know, equipment. So I'm not buying stuff specifically for a certain project per se. So maybe going forward, maybe starting doing some deposits on some of these larger projects, but for now it's not something that I've really spent a lot of time looking into. So I feel like tree work is one of those tasks around the home that not many people plan for. You know, fortunately, if there's a storm, most people have insurance, so that kind of alleviates some of the financial headache of that. But tree work is expensive, especially if you're gonna take the time to hire a reputable company that's licensed and insured properly. And I feel like a lot of people sometimes when they get a quote for tree work get sticker shock. And the reason kind of for this talking point specifically is to try to break that down to help you better understand kind of like what all goes into that and kind of how the estimate process works and what I'm looking at when I'm there. There's a lot of things that the everyday person doesn't notice or doesn't see, but that I have to take into account for, because it's gonna determine how much time we're at the project, how much material we're gonna have to haul off, what that's gonna cost me to haul that material off, like where's the closest dump that I can take it, and what their rates are. Because you know, in Nashville you can pay $300 to dump a dump trailer load full of logs, or in Dixon you pay $150. So there's a lot of different things that go into trying to get you guys the best price possible. Yeah, so with the estimate process, we try to streamline everything and make it as easy as possible for everybody. We've got multiple outlets and different ways for people to reach out, whether that's through our website, Instagram, Facebook, email, obviously call or text. Once we've got your info and we kind of got a general lay of the land of what you're looking for, we'll come out and do a site walk. and get everybody's expectations in order, figure out what the client actually is wanting, what they need. We'll work through that, answer any questions. And once we've agreed on a price and terms, we'll then schedule a time for us to come out and perform the work. And I think that's kind of where we set ourselves apart, is just trying to make the process as easy as possible for both parties involved. So as far as equipment goes, I'm kind of a pretty brand loyal person. If it's power tools, it's DeWalt. Chainsaws, it's Husqvarna. But as far as like skid steers and like diesel powered equipment goes, I love Kubota for a few different reasons. Skid steer wise, the main reason is the sliding glass door. Especially when you're doing tree work and you're handling logs. Most skid steers, when you've got the boom up a little bit and you've got that bucket or grapple in front of you, you can't get out because the door's open like a normal door does. With the Kubota ones, they slide over the top of your head, so you can still get out if you need to. I don't recommend it when you've got a log in the grapple bucket, but for emergency purposes, you could get out. The other thing is with Kubota is, especially if you're starting out and you're a small business owner, their financing for their equipment is top notch in my book. If you're buying a skid steer or a tractor or a Mini X, whatever it is, it's 0% financing for 48 months and zero money down. And since Kubota has their own financial department, they're not necessarily looking at like credit. They don't report to a credit bureau. They're just looking at payment history. So especially if you already have a machine with them, the process is super easy because that's all they're looking for. The other thing is even if you want to finance it for longer than 48 months, even if you finance it for 60 months or 72 months, at 60 months, it's only a 1% interest rate. So they're super flexible with like machine payments and stuff. And I think all around, it's a great company to do business with. I feel like the overall vision and goal for Paszek Services is kind of ever evolving. I think land clearing is somewhere I feel real comfortable in doing, especially in the next few years. And that's kind of like an ongoing process, slowly building up to that. I don't know if anybody has sat down and looked at pricing on equipment for that, but it's pretty expensive. So that's our long-term goal. And I think right now, my main focus is just improving what we do now. Kind of looking at what we do best, and that's mainly the tree service. 2024, I think the goal is to just kind of hone in on that and see how we can improve that process for not only us from an efficiency standpoint, but for our clients. Try to make it as easy as possible for you guys, as efficient as possible, and at a solid price point that everybody's happy with.